Hello, I'm Colleen, also known as Rumor Haven, which is the pen name that I write under. And today, as a brief workshop for writing fiction, short fiction, or long, I would like to discuss the topic of sensory detail. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard at one time or other, and probably many times over, show, don't tell. And I'm sure you fully understand what that means. We're all storytellers here, but the trick is learning how to be story showers, in that we're trying to get our readers immersed into the worlds that we are creating through our writing. And I am not just a writer, I am also an editor. And in my role as an editor, I can always tell, as I'm reading someone else's manuscript, who and when they are really seeing their story. They are seeing and hearing their characters. They are seeing the setting that they're creating. And I always know it because I see it. I see the people. I see the environment. I hear, I feel, I taste, I smell, and so forth. And it's a striking difference between when you're reading a story where it's not to say the story's not super clever. It could have very creative plot line. It could have exciting action. But if there's not that rich descriptive detail, then it just feels as if someone is writing from point A to point B. And I know that as a writer, that's when I most often find writing to be such a slog and very difficult to kind of push through sections where I feel like, okay, I need to advance my story, and so I'm trying to get through these sequences of action, but it just feels very flat. It just feels very shallow, and if I myself am not seeing and hearing and feeling and smelling and tasting, it's not enough to just say this is what happened. Showing it gives the reader this opportunity to actually step through this barrier between reality and the literary and just enter that world. But at any rate, getting down to the simple 5 senses is what my object is today. Step 1, I would like you to select one scene from one story that you have written. This could be the story you submitted to the festival. This could be something that you're currently drafting, whether you're writing it for a school assignment or for pleasure. This could be something that you've previously written. Whatever you want, just from some piece of your original writing, take one brief scene from it, and then step 2 is quite simply to read through that scene, and whether you've got it on paper, maybe you handwrote it, maybe you typed it and printed it out, maybe you're reading it right off your screen, right off a tablet, off your computer screen, whatever works for you, whatever tool is at your disposal to highlight or underline or notate your scene. Make those notations for yourself where you are seeing the 5 senses. So, sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. Again, underline, highlight, and just jot. Maybe if you're highlighting and you have different colors at your disposal and you want to use a certain color to represent a certain sense so that you can see visually, but otherwise you can just make also make the note to yourself if you're writing in the margin. What sense is being appealed to by a certain detail? And then your next step is to simply look over what you've noted. Have you hit all 5 senses? Or are 1, 2, 3, 4 missing? Look to see what sense you might not have appealed to just yet. And disclaimer, you probably are going to have a lot more appeals to sight than anything. It's just automatic that we go for those visuals straight away. So don't feel bad if, especially if you're color coding and you could actually see the play of color on your pages. Don't freak out if you're seeing it's like very visual heavy, because that's just natural and it's almost needed. The basic idea is just that we're just trying to see that we're at some point hitting on all the senses, or at least as many as we can, as appropriate to that scene. Because for sure, I would argue that the hardest sense to get into a scene, you may beg to differ. I would say for myself, taste. The most obvious way of appealing to that is if you have a character who is eating food, but you can also have it come into ways like, say someone gets punched in the face and their lip gets cut against their tooth and they start bleeding. And so if we're in that person's point of view, you know, you can kind of taste that metallic taste of the blood. If that's something that naturally falls in your scene. Don't make your character get punched in the face just for the sake of getting a taste detail in there. We don't want to force these things in. We don't want to force them in, but it gets us to revisit what we do have and see what falls in naturally. You want to make sure that all the details that you're putting in serve the story and don't derail it. Taste is a very challenging one to incorporate, but if you have the opportunity to do it, it's probably one of the most potent ones, I would say, for bringing a reader in. There's something very, very visceral about that. And with smell as well. Scent, again, can be a tricky thing, but you just think about it. This is where your creativity comes into it. If you have found that you've covered all 5 senses, high five to those 5 senses. Good job. That's excellent. Second part of this exercise, now that you've read through your scene and you're thinking through the senses that do and do not appear in it, if you will, let's take a few minutes to just close our eyes. Let's start by just taking a deep breath in as you picture yourself in the setting of the scene that you've chosen for this exercise. What characters are present? Which one are you? If you, as this character, have sight, look around you. Consider what you can most obviously see. What stands out? Now look beyond it. If you, as this character, have the mobility to do so, begin to move throughout the space. Get closer to anything that draws your curiosity. As you're moving around your space, begin to reach out and touch the things that you're seeing. Or if you must remain still, what is within your reach? Run your hands along these surfaces. Feel their textures. Beyond what you might be touching with your hands, what do you feel in contact with the rest of your body? The air, your clothes, the ground underfoot, anything in contact with your skin. What does it feel like? Now that you've been in this space for a while, start to listen. Can you hear anything? Any noise up close? What about a few feet or yards away? The far distance? Strain your ears to hear if you, as this character, are able to. Now pause for a moment and take a deep breath through your nose. Are there any scents that waft to your nostrils? If so, can you discern what they are? What they might be coming from? What do they smell like? Is it a faint scent or a strong one? Pleasant or unpleasant? What does it feel like in your nasal passages, in your throat when you breathe this in? If you have food or drink in your space available, then feel free to take a bite and take a sip. And if there's no food or drink to consume, does the air and whatever is filtering through it hit a certain point on your tongue? If you lick your lips, can you taste anything? What else might hit your tongue? So then, when you feel ready, just take a deep breath and start to become aware of your own body, yours, not your character's this time. And then go ahead and open your eyes. How did that work out for you? Did you find it easy? Was it a bit challenging? Was it a little distracting with my voiceover? If you found that distracting at all through that exercise, then please just take the cue from that and try it again on your own without me talking over it. This is something that you can do anytime you find yourself feeling like, okay, you know what the setting is, you know who the character or characters involved in it are, you know what action needs to take place to get your story to that next point. But are you seeing it? Are you experiencing it? And if you ever feel like it's going a little stale and you're not really sure how to describe everything, take a moment. Just close your eyes, breathe yourself into a calm state, and see yourself as this character, whoever your main point of view character is, in that setting, and see what senses that you're picking up on. And then after that, you go back to your story and see if that does make any difference in how you're describing that scene. For the sake of this exercise, let's go back to that scene that you've chosen. Is there something that you picked up during your meditation, which I guess I called a visualization, but we did more than just visualize, didn't we? When you had your eyes closed and you just imagined yourself in your scene, is there something that you uncovered that you had not considered before? and could work well for your story when you go back to your manuscript and can add that in? Was there an extra sensation that you hadn't noted before? If so, then that's great. This is something that you can and may already automatically do. And if it's not something that you find comes to you naturally, then I think that working through a meditative exercise and going through the visualization could be really helpful for then training yourself for where you don't even have to try. You don't have to step away from your blank page to take this moment and close your eyes. You find that you're doing it as you're writing. And if you are in that headspace, you're just in that space where your character is, and you're seeing it in your mind's eye. That is that magical moment when the words really just start flowing and the story can take on a life of its own. Not every moment, though, can be so magical. I have been there. I definitely have my moments where I'm just pushing myself to get from point A to point B, and that's fine. When you are just drafting your story, just write what you need to. If you're just needing to get through and get the bare bones of your story written down, this is what revision is for. This is why we go through multiple drafts. No one's going to get it on their first try, so don't put that pressure on yourself to get it on your first try. Get your draft down, but then as you're going back through, look at your scenes and just take note. Am I appealing to the senses? And the more that you do that in your revising process, I think then for subsequent stories, it just starts to happen more freely as you're initially drafting even. You just kind of pick up the habit. You're a bit more mindful of how you might be able to bring in those sensations. I hope that this activity was helpful for you, that there's something you can take away from it, something you might do to make your story a virtual reality experience for your reader. So, thank you so much for your time, and right on all. Bye.